Hey everybody, Riot Mort here, and it is time for the patch 14.7 rundown. That's the 7th patch of set 14, and this is the final competitive patch. This is the patch that the Tactician's Crown will be played on. This is the last patch that we take super seriously, trying to get the balance as perfect as we can. There'll be one more patch, which is 14.8, which is the for fun patch, where we get a little looser. But overall, this is sort of it. This is the competitive patch. Now, if we look at the last patch, definitely what happened was there were some buffs to both Vanguard and Exotech that gave them a lot of flat health, and that flat health makes the mid game especially really painful. It makes it so that a lot of comps that can't handle that really high base health in the early game kind of get stomped out, and so the meta ended up being a little, actually not even a little, I'm not going to sugarcoat, the meta ended up narrower than we would have liked for 14.6, and so for this patch we're trying to fix that. There will be some partial reverts to some of the buffs from last patch, as well as some adjustments of other things as we go into the competitive scene, so that hopefully the mid game isn't as painful, because right now the early game is actually pretty good, the mid game is pretty awful, and then the end game, unfortunately, there's like only a few comps that can survive that mid game to reach the end game and be pretty powerful. So let's dive right in and talk about these changes. All right, first up on the system side, again, as we're getting ready for 15, you're going to see changes that are coming towards that. First one here is all Radiant items have now been renamed to Radiant, the name of the item. Radiant Ginsu's Rageblade, Radiant Brambleclaw, Bramblevest, things like that. It was fun, but it makes it really unintuitive and pretty difficult to talk about. So this is just one of those things that when it comes to simplifying the game, you know, when you call Radiant Void Staff, I can't even remember what the name of it was. So we're just simplifying this down as we move forward in the future. So yeah. And then if you don't pick an item on stage 5 plus carousel, it will now prioritize a completed item over the highest cost champion. Small quality of life change if you get like disconnected or something like that. Okay, and then double up. I'll try to be quick here because I know a lot of you aren't tuning in for double up, but double up, we're trying to get ready here, and we've kind of seen that the cannon has been pretty successful. We erred on the side of being a little more for fun, just to kind of see how that would land. And what we found was that 3-star forecasts were a little bit more common than we would have liked. So we're going to be taking a pretty big swing here to kind of change how the meta works with the cannon. So first off, the team cannon, the cooldown is now, instead of it being, based on the star level, it's now based on the cost. So if you send a 1-cost unit, 3 turns. Same with 2, same with 3. And then 4 and 5 costs are actually 5 turns. So sending 4 and 5 costs will be a little bit longer. So you can send 1 cost pretty quickly. Now here's the big one. You can only send 1-star units. So no more like using reinforcement to get a big 2-star and then sending it, or using a duplicator or things like that. You can only send 1 at a time. So someone can help you 1, maybe 2 copies of a 4 cost, but no longer like 3 or even more. So this is a pretty big nerf to like 3-starring 4 costs. We kind of want you to use the cannon pretty frequently on these 1-star units and not feel like you have to save all that bench space. And then we've also removed the duplicator gift armory option from the late game, and it's been replaced with 3 lesser duplicators. And then finally, the augment reinforcements is just gone. This augment kind of did some pretty silly things in that mode. So again, all of this in double up is aimed at having less 3-star 4 costs, because again, we're pretty happy with the early and mid game, but that late game kind of got pretty bad here. So double up players, let us know what you think. Should be hopefully a little bit healthier. All right, on the trait side, Cypher. Cypher is one of our high-risk traits, and high-risk traits are meant to be pretty fun. They have some pretty high peaks. They can have some lows if you miss. Generally, our competitive players are really good at optimizing these, though. And so because of that, at the absolute peak of play, they end up being a little strong. So for this patch, as we head into, the Tactician's Crown, we're just going to pull that power down a little. So the base loss value, especially at stage 2, is going from 16 to 13. Stage 3 from 20 to 18. Stage 4 barely matters. Most people, when they play Cypher, aren't doing stage 4 anyway. And stage 5 is the same. This is intended to sort of, basically, if you think about a Cypher player and the cash out they get, pretty normal play where you get it at like 2-1, 2-2, lost streak till about 3-7, and then cash it out. This will lower the value of what you got by about 1 or 2 tiers. especially if you didn't go pretty deep. So Cypher will be weaker in the Tactician's Crown. That is intentional. Executioner 4 and 5 get a small 5% crit chance buff. Not a lot of people playing Executioner 4 and 5. That being said, it's the final patch. We don't want to like swing really big here and have all of a sudden Rengar and Vex dominate. That's not the plan. So small buff there. All right, Exotech. As I said, the flat HP that 7 Exotech gets in the mid game just a little too out of control. The previous number was 240. We had buffed it to 300. We're going to go halfway in between. It's going to be 270. This is meant to be a nerf to 7 Exotech, so it'll be a little weaker. And then whenever you're playing Exotech, everyone kind of dreaded Hollow Bow because it really only had one user, which is Varus, who's not really that stylish right now. So we're going to give the item 15% AD so that you at least will feel a little bit better if you end up putting it on Jhin or Zeri, so that hopefully Exotech is a little bit more playable instead of just, oops, I have a Hollow Bow, I can't play it anymore. So Nitro, very small buff here, but it does add up. 1 more HP per Chrome. So if you think about a T-Hex at 200, that's going to be 200 more HP. Again, small change here. There's some other buffs to the champions you'll see, but Nitro just a little better. I don't imagine this is going to swing the needle wildly, but should help it. And again, we're trying not to swing things pretty wildly given that it is a big competitive patch. Vanguard, it was 40 before. We buffed it to 48. We're going to go down to 45 here. Vanguard is a very good front line. We've seen now the shift from, it used to be 4 Vanguard, 4 Marksman, shifted to 6 Vanguard, 2 Marksman. Again, we're happy that 6 Vanguard's playable, but that mid game especially, because you can get those Vanguards online pretty early, and there's just so much health to burn through. So this will pull that back down a bit. On the champion side, Mundo, this nerf is not really intended to nerf the Gorilla comp. We're actually just shifting the power, and the Zyra buff, these are intended to sort of balance each other out. Right now, if you're playing the Gorilla comp, people call it the Gorilla comp, it's the Mundo, Zyra, Seraphine, Alistar reroll. So much of the power is in Seraphine and Mundo, and if you get Zyra, it's almost like not really worth it. So Zyra's being buffed up to be a little bit better here, pretty much a 5% buff. But to compensate for that, Mundo's going to lose just a little bit of healing. Now, this isn't really the part of Mundo's kit that makes him that strong. He has really, really high health. He still hits really hard. This will just cut the healing a microscopic amount. Again, just wanted to make sure we didn't overbuff this comp too much. That's all this is really doing. Vi, this is the second Vanguard nerf. Right now, Vi, she's been kind of OP for a while now, especially at 1 and 2 star. You get a 2-star Vi with 1 or 2 tank items in the early game, and we'll see you at stage 4, right? Like, she can get you the whole way there. She's often better than things like Rost. So Vi is going to get a little bit of a shield nerf at 1 and 2 star. And then just calling it out, even though it's mostly just us following framework, she is going to get a nerf at 4 or buff at 4 star. So if you somehow get Vi 4, she shields a tiny bit more. Cool. On the 2-cost side, Graves definitely, that small buff we gave him 2 patches ago made him shine. He can be pretty frustrating. Giving him a very tiny nerf here where his projectiles will do, instead of 35% of his AD, 33% of his AD. So pretty small here. The bigger nerf here is that Graves' interaction with Titanic Hydra and Wit's End was kind of out of control. If you got these artifacts, they were pretty insane because they were triggering 5 times per auto. Yeesh. So they're only going to trigger 1 time per auto. So we definitely expect this to make these items quite a bit worse on Graves. That's not really intended to be 5 times, so expect those artifacts to be worse than Graves, and so some of the Graves high rolls you've seen with these artifacts should be significantly weaker. Shyvana, very small buff here. Again, this is part of the Nitro package. Just a little bit more health gain per cast. Such a small amount here, 5%. Don't think it's going to change too much. Vayne, mostly unplayed and meant to kind of help Slayer. I don't know that this is going to make Vayne reroll meta or anything like that, but even if you've just got her a secondary in Anima Squad or Slayer comp, she'll be hitting a little harder here, so some more AD for Vayne. On the 3-cost side, the only champion changing is Fiddlesticks. We're pretty happy with Fiddlesticks' damage output. The problem is, if you put him in the backline, it takes him forever to get back to his next cast. He has to do those autos. So this is meant to buff like a normal techie fiddle or even like a bruiser fiddle you put in the second row, maybe even something like a sniper's focus fiddle so that he can get back to casting quicker without just cranking his damage and healing. We didn't really want to go that route. So if you're playing him in the front line and having him like drain tank, he's not going to be any stronger, but by having some more attack speed, he can get back to casting quicker. Annie, this is meant to be a small nerf towards the peak of the amp comp. You'll see there's some other amp changes as well, but certainly 5 amp has been kind of the like lost streak. If you can get to 5 amp and then turn it online, it's pretty hard to beat. And so as we were doing sims and trying to balance this out, Annie's mini fireball, which is the thing that scales with amp, is going to be a little less damage here. Cho'Gath, unfortunately, is kind of like, we've really struggled with this guy, I'm not going to lie. It's like he gets played in 6 Boombot comps because he's a Boombot, but you're not like really super excited to have him as your tank. It's not like 6 Bruisers really doing a lot right now. We're seeing mostly Vanguard front lines. We basically aren't really seeing much Bruiser frontline other than 2. Maybe you slot in 4 later when you hit the Kobuko, but you don't really play Cho'Gath. And so Cho'Gath is going to get 100 HP. And remember, this affects because his spell is based off his base HP when he starts. So this is actually a pretty chunky buff to Cho'Gath. I would expect this to hopefully help Bruisers, give another 4-cost tank besides Leona. And I expect this actually to be one of the bigger changes in the meta. Now, that being said, I think I've said that like 2 or 3 times so far this set, and it hasn't really come to pass. So maybe I'm wrong. But do keep an eye out on Cho'Gath. If you're a competitive player, I would definitely be at least practicing this comp and seeing if it's really changed much. Misfortune. After the Dynamo nerf, Dynamo has kind of fallen out of favor a little bit. The Syndicate buffs did help. So we're giving Misfortune a tiny bit more. The big thing with Misfortune is you get her, she's another one of those, like, she does okay in the mid game, but as stage 5 and stage 6 roll around and people start hitting their Zacs and their Kobukos and their Garens and stuff like that, she just falls off a cliff. She just can't output the damage to compete with that. And so we're going to give her 3 more AD to make that spell hit a little bit harder. Not a big swing here, but should be a small buff. And then one other thing is, as we were playing and noticing, is that 7 Syndicate Misfortune is actually pretty bad. A lot of 7 Syndicate's early power was because you would 7 Syndicate off the Twisted Fate that you were re-rolling early on in the set. And 7 Syndicate Twisted Fate is nutty. He gets like whole double card thing, multiplies his damage pretty insanely. 7 Misfortune, not so much. So she's going to get a small buff there. It only changes things if you're playing 7 Syndicate, but calling it out. Nico, this is meant to help Street Demon a little bit. Also meant to help amp on the tankiness side, not necessarily the damage side, because again, you'll see some damage nerfs. But Nico just also not really living up to things like Leona, so getting a small amount of spell shield heal. It's a very tiny buff, but Nico should be a little tankier. You should be a little happier to play Nico. Vex has mostly fallen off at this point. Again, Vex is another champion that, like, how does Vex get through 6 Vanguard, or how does Vex get through, you know, some of those big Exotech front lines? She really can't. So Vex is just going to get a small amount of damage here. And remember, this is actually just the main damage. This isn't the AoE. This isn't all of her damage. It's just like her ability to kind of get through her primary target. And then finally, Ziggs, same thing. We're trying to get a lot more of the 4 costs here. Generally, a Tactician's Crown where a lot more of the 4 costs are playable is definitely a better Tactician's Crown to watch. So Vex gets buffed and Ziggs gets buffed as well. Again, none of these are like giant buffs, but enough that hopefully there's more 4-cost lines to be played as we head to the Tactician's Crown. Finally, on the 5-cost side, Renekton. If you get 6 Rapid Fire Renekton, pretty solid. If you play normal Renekton, he's okay, not great. So we're going to give him 100 more HP so that he can be a little more durable as well. Hopefully, melee Renekton ends up feeling a little bit better, and he's not just a 6 Rapid Fire bot or things like that. All right, Samira, this is a pretty big nerf. The base Samira, so if you're playing her in like 7 Street Demon, she'll be a little better, a tiny bit. But if you're playing her in Amp, she's going to be a decent chunk worse here. You're going to have a bit less damage from Samira. Samira's are wiping the board. Now, before anyone comments and says, hey, I notice you're nerfing Amp and you're nerfing Samira and Annie, but you're not really hitting the main thing, which is Yuumi. We know, like, Yuumi is a good part of the mid game, and that's the thing. We don't want Amp to necessarily be entirely reliant on, like, having to hit that Samira. It's still going to be a big bump, but we want like a Yuumi to be playable in the mid game, and that's a good thing. So we're leaving the power in Yuumi right now, pulling just a little bit out of Annie and Samira to try to get it in line with other late game comps. And then the other big nerf that I think hits every end game comp here is I think we've all come to know Zac as the guy who grows, and if you get him up to like 30, 40, 50, or if you're Wajan Iverson, 120 bloblets, this guy's insane. This guy does so much damage. It's not that we don't mind him being tanky. That's kind of his job. But like when that same tanky Zac with 6,000 health is also just deleting backliners, it's a little much. So we're buffing baseline Zac's damage, but the AP per blob is getting cut in half. This is a big nerf. You can see that like, you know, if you have a 10 blob Zac, you'll be doing around the same amount of damage. But after that, it's going to start getting pulled down. Zac shouldn't quite be carrying the damage of all the endgame comps. Really don't like it when he's literally number 1 in damage with 3 defensive items. So this should pull Zac down. All right, on the augment side, again, mostly aiming at the Tactician's Crown. There's certain augments we've left in the game, kind of like knowing that they'd be a little risky throughout the thing. But for Tactician's Crown, maybe it's time to pull the trigger on these. So Last Stand is going to lose 50 health. It won't be quite as swingy. Luden's Echo is going to get a small buff here. So augment's kind of underperforming, but not by a ton. So small buff here. Memory Bank no longer offered on 3-2. This one's weird. It just feels like you're behind when you take it on 3-2. Overclocked. This is the amp one that says whenever you have 3 items on an amp, they gain 1 amp. This augment's weird. It's really hard to play. It just didn't really work out. You know, so it's like weirdly, if you like somehow have a 5 item start and have a Nidalee strong start, you can kind of play it, but even then it's not that great. So we're just going to pull it out for now. Spare parts, man, this one's such a shame. This is such a cool augment, but something happened last patch that caused it to bug. Right now, if you take this augment, and a lot of players have reported this, the turret just doesn't fire its spell. And so it's actually just an awful, awful augment. And unfortunately, we weren't able to get the bug fixed in time, given the other things we had to do for like set 15. So we had to disable the augment. It kind of sucks because it's generally a fun augment. It hasn't really had its time to shine because Nitro's kind of fallen off on the back half of the set, which is really a shame, but needs to be disabled. Thorn-plated armor. This augment's just a little too good in the early game. So for now, we're going to cut the healing a small amount. And then finally is Think Fast. Yes, Think Fast is around. We brought it back for fun. It was great. I don't think we want the Tactician's Crown decided by somebody who got Think Fast, different ping. It just does not sound like a good idea. So we are going to disable Think Fast for this patch. It will not be a part of the Tactician's Crown. So there you go. And then on the bug fix side, just 2 small things here, but PvE rounds and double up can no longer have 0 bonus orbs. This is a pretty rare thing that could happen, but just calling it out here. And then fixed a bug where 4-star Shyvana gained a little less health than intended. When we were balancing Shyvana, we just noticed her 4-star number was outside of framework, so it like buffs her about 10%. So if you ever get a 4-star Shyvana, grats. And there you go. That's the patch. So cool. Good luck to everybody in the Tactician's Crown. Cyber Study has been a lot of fun. Like I said, there will be one more patch, which is 14.8, where we'll be a little more loose. But yeah, should be a lot of fun. One other thing to note here is this is a 3-week patch because Riot has its usual summer break where there's a week off. So this will be a 3-week patch. But overall, we hope this will be a healthier meta. So there you go. That's it for the balance stuff. If that's what you came here for, you can leave now. Now, one other thing I have to cover real quick here. This is a bit separate from balance and live. A bit of an update on my situation, actually. Some of you know earlier I took a break for 3 weeks, kind of rejuvenated, kind of came back. And I'm not going anywhere as far as that goes, but something's happened at Riot where Riot's a big company and there's lots of things going on at the company. And I'm a pretty senior designer. I think they call it senior director. You know, I'm pretty good at solving pretty tough design problems. And I have been asked by some of the super high up people at Riot to go help with a different design problem for a short while. And so for starting July 7th, for about 3 months, I am going to go off the TFT team for a bit to go solve some other design problems that need to be solved. My hope is that I'm just there to help people solve these. Maybe you'll never even hear about it, you know, just things I can go help with. But as I've kind of grown in my reach, I need to go help with these things. But what that means is for 3 months, I'm not going to be a part of the TFT team. I'm not really going to be working on live or sets or anything like that. I've set the team up for success. I've got people like Giovanni and Kent who are going to be taking care of things. So I'm not going to be around as much as far as on the actual team. Now, what that means for my stream is I'm still going to stream each weekend, but kind of as a player. If 15-1, 15-2 PBE stuff, I'm not going to be around to do that. The team's got it. They're going to do well. So I'm not going anywhere. Things you can expect. I'm going to do the 14-8 rundown. And then I'm also going to work with Sloan to do the PBE rundown for set 15. I know he's pretty excited to do that, and he can't wait to talk about the set he's been leading. But after that, for set 15, patch rundowns will stop because it's weird for me to talk about things I don't have context on. Like, I'm really supposed to be spending 100% of my time focused on these other design problems, not TFT. Now, again, I still want to like play the game and stuff like that. But so this is sort of a call out to anyone in the community that, like, for set 15, if you can, we saw this a bit when I took that 3-week break, but if you guys can do patch rundowns and things like that, you should set up to do that. Because like I said, it's really weird for me to come in and be like, here's what the team was thinking, like that's weird. That's weird. So I'm still going to stream as a player for these 3 months. And I do want to also highlight that it's a short-term thing, right? Like, they've asked me to go solve these problems. I'm going to go do it. And then I'm going to come back. I'm pretty excited for a lot of what TFT has in the future. There's some stuff I've set up I want to see finished. There's some future set stuff I think is really, really great. So I'm not going anywhere. Like, I love TFT. That's not the thing. But I do got to help solve these problems. So I'll still be around. But yeah. So like I said, on your end as a player, this shouldn't change much. The game should still be great. You're still going to get your sets, your patches, all your cool events, stuff like that. Because again, I've been helping train people for years, and now we've got people who could do that. So it's more just like, if you guys come to me and you're like, why did this balance change happen? I'm going to be like, I don't know. Like, I'm just not in those conversations right now. So there you go. All right. Hopefully you guys enjoy. I'm excited to see how the Tactician's Crown plays out. See who makes it, see who wins this year. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, yeah. All right. That's going to do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.